Hello, and welcome to Conversations Worth Your While, a show in which I speak with some really cool people about interesting topics to spark, inspire, and motivate both personal and professional change. And today's topic is leaving the corporate world to make a difference. This conversation is worth your while if you'd love to make a difference in a bigger way. Or if you want change, or if growing and doing something more is intriguing to you, but maybe you're a little uncertain if it's the right move. And if because of COVID, now you have an inkling that you have the ability to utilize your skills in a different, more impactful way. And what we're going to cover is we're going to talk about how each of us left the corporate world, our circumstances, the life changes that ensued, the internal changes that we experienced, and how we finally landed on our feet as self employed change makers. We're going to talk about the things that threaten to hold us back because these are some things that you might experience in your journey. And we'll show you how we overcame each of those obstacles. And then finally, we're going to leave you with some really good information on why it is possible for you and the things that you can do right now to get ready for this change and move forward in a way that feels safe without just jumping ship. Okay, so let's start with some intros. I'm Linda Bucher. I'm a heart centered master coach, mindset mentor, transformational speaker, and author. And if you're excited about making a positive impact on the world and you feel that bigness inside of you that you know you're meant to share, and you want to do more, be more, and have more joy, more fun, more balance, and more impact, then you want to connect with me because I will help you unleash your gifts on the world. And today I have the pleasure of being joined by Jeanne Gallagher of Seaside Solutions and Discover Rising Tides. She's a financial advisor and a podcast host helping people to achieve financial wellness. So, hi, Jeanne, welcome.
Thank you so much. Welcome.
You're welcome. Okay, so Jeanne, why don't you tell us a little bit more about who you serve and what you
Mhm.
do?
Sure. Well, I wear two hats. When I first started, when I left the corporate world, I could only consider one hat. But as we all develop, and so now I'm wearing two. As you said, I am a financial advisor with through Seaside Solutions, which is my company, through GWN Securities, and so I'm serving families, people, and providing education and financial wellness. Is really the education is the basis of financial wellness. And also, I recently started Discover Rising Tides platform, and it is a podcast platform where I talk with women business owners and how they maintain life balance by utilizing the outdoors. Because I found out that's everything that I do. And if I'm not outside, I'm not happy and it impacts my business. And so I know there's others out there. So utilizing that platform for discussions and really wonderful conversations.
Beautiful, beautiful. I love that you brought up life balance because as we whenever we're making changes, if if like we might have some beautiful thing we want to achieve, but if our life gets out of balance and gets out of whack, then that makes that a lot less attractive to us. So that's a beautiful thing, for sure. So thank you. So let's talk a little bit about our stories, right? So when you were leaving the corporate world, right, to make a difference, things change, your circumstances change, there's life changes that happen because of that, there's internal changes that happen because of that, and then finally you've landed on your feet. So can you tell us a little bit about your story?
Sure. I left twice. And in between the two times, there wasn't a business involved. But as our children were growing up, when they were younger, my husband and I spent very long time in the restaurant business in New England, and then decided that that wasn't really a great environment to raise kids because we were never home. So we transitioned into a more of a corporate 9 to 5-ish kind of a job because it brings everything that we think we're supposed to have, the security of a job and benefits and all of those things that society tells us that are necessary. And what you end up doing is, and working there, I'll probably get off track because I'm good at that, but working there, you're giving your life to the corporation. And so I was fortunate enough to be able to, the corporation was making changes, and I was fortunate enough to receive a package of change. And so that gave us the opportunity to relocate. And then, but then when you relocate, you say, well, I'm supposed to get a job. So I got a job and a business opportunity landed in my lap, not knowing that it was going to be life changing, but not knowing also that it was going to be what I'm driven to do, but I had to try. And so having the job gave me the opportunity to try the business part-time, and it developed into here we are today.
Right. So that's very beautiful. And maybe a little less scary when you have the opportunity to do both at the same time. So,
Absolutely.
yeah, yeah, that's
It's
interesting.
still frightening because at one point you have to give one of them up.
Very
You
true.
don't have to, but you should,
Yeah.
if you're going to make that transition, you do have to burn the boat, cut the lifeline. And no matter how well prepared you are, that is really frightening.
Yeah. I did not last very long in doing both. So, my situation was interesting because I had had a job that I loved and I was very good at, and the circumstances in the corporation changed, where the whole culture and feel, not overnight, but within a year, went from a whole family feel to cold,
Mhm.
impersonal. People weren't talking. There was no noise. No one's at the water cooler. It was a crate. I was like, what the heck? And at the same time, I I personally was experiencing like an internal, I call it civil unrest, because
Mhm.
I was unfulfilled. So
Mm.
I had been fulfilled. So it wasn't that the job changed or the people it was me. I was changing from the inside out, and that's what precipitated my change.
Mhm.
And so I just knew, I was like, I want more. I want to feel like energized, and I used to, and I don't anymore. Where did that go? Right? What has to give? What's wrong with me? Is it me? Is it my job? Is it my marriage? Like, I was like, I didn't even know what it was. Um, and so eventually my body was a mess. My gallbladder was working about like 25% capacity. My back and neck, I was in pain 24 hours a day. I could sleep for about 15 minutes, and I wake up in pain and have to move. Um, I was just such a mess. I had 22 extra pounds. I didn't know where it came from. I was still exercising and trying to eat healthy. And it was all just the stress of being in the wrong place. So
Mhm.
intuitively, my instincts were like, you got to get out, man. You got to get out. And then to
Your
make
body
matters
was
worse,
screaming at you.
it was screaming, yeah. And then to make matters worse, when you really are moving in the wrong direction, you will self sabotage. I could not get my ass to work at 8 a.m. I could not. It would be like 9:10, 9:15 when I strolled in every day.
Mhm.
And I was like, what is wrong with you? So really something had to give. And when I discovered, which is another long story I won't tell, but when I discovered life coaching, I
Mhm.
decided I was going in like a split second. I knew I had this giant intuitive hit, lightning bolt, like, you're supposed to be a life coach. I didn't even know what it was, but I knew, I was for sure, I knew I had to be it. Within 48 hours, I spent a ton of money to sign up for a class for a
Mhm.
year long training and certification. And I was about 2 months into that, where I was like, oh my God. Now I'm a widowed mom of three, and my kids were little when my husband
Mm.
died. They were like 3, 5, and 7. And I was like, here I am working full time because I go in late. I got to stay late because the boss will freak out if I don't. I get home, I got kids, mom, 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 and now I get them each a bath. I tell them a story, and it's like 9 o'clock, and I'm sitting down to try to learn a brand new, right, just for a business. I want to learn how to be a coach. I'm going to be a good coach. This is not I'm going to try it out. Like, I'm going to be a
Mhm.
coach. I already knew that. I'm trying to learn this new thing. And I was like, I have no more capacity. I'm so tired. So it lasted about 2 months from the
Mhm.
beginning of training, which was, like I said, a year long, until I was like, I gotta go. Like, I can't, I know what I'm supposed to be doing. I know it. I've got to bet on myself,
Mhm.
so, and
That's motivating.
yeah, but it was really scary. So, let's talk about the things that threaten to hold each of us back. Like, for you, what were the things that almost derailed you, right, and threatened to hold you
Oh,
back?
there, the list is long. And I think that that's what prevents people from making that leap, because what also happens too in the corporate world is we don't realize that hamster wheel starts to stifle our inner possibilities,
Yeah.
right? And so it deadens our thought process, because you go to work, you work all those long hours, you're doing the pressures of people coming at you from above you and from below you and through this, and even to the laterally as well. It eats away at you. So the I think that working through that or realizing what part of you are you losing
Mm,
in being in the corporate world is something that you really have to first of all recognize, right, and then overcome. And
yeah.
there's a piece of vulnerability and bravery that happens when you're going to step out and do something different.
Yeah. Yeah, that loss of identity when you can only identify with what you do at work and then
Mhm.
maybe at home. I'm a mom, right? And then I'm a this, right, at work.
Right.
Um
And that's a very common thing, because when you introduce yourself to somebody, well, what do you do? Well, I work at this and I do this. And that's not what we do. That's just our job.
yeah,
But society says that if we have a really great answer for that, we're set and we
right,
have
well, we got it.
achieved what we're supposed to be achieving versus, well, I'm a mom of three. Or that, I mean, that's an achievement, but that's not
Yeah.
what society wants us to say.
Right. Yeah. It's I worked in the corporate world for more than a quarter century. And you're absolutely right. I became blind to my own gifts. They got
Mhm.
suppressed. Boy, could I make a spreadsheet. Whoa,
Me
could I
too.
make a spreadsheet? I am like a
Excel is my
spreadsheet,
best friend.
right? Some of my best work is in spreadsheets. But I had suppressed the entire creative part of me where to the extent where I didn't even think I was creative at all.
Mhm,
And so I lost who I was.
mhm.
I didn't know that I lost it. All I knew was like, I don't even know. I've never asked myself, who am I? And I can
Right.
tell you from working with clients for the past 13 years, that is a huge, important place where we start. Who am I now? Because who you were when you graduated from college is not who you are now. Who you were before you got divorced was not who you are now. Who you were, before you made the job change to chase the money is not who
Mhm.
you are now, right?
Yeah, and I
So,
think too that some of the accomplishments that happen in the corporate world, they're not yours. They're the company's accomplishments. And so you're not receiving the accolades. Somebody, maybe one of your workmates will say, "Great job," but you're not receiving the recognition and the accolades of this great project that you completed because it's sucked up into the corporate world.
yeah, and so not only are you not acknowledging that, but you're losing is you're not able to make the difference that you can make when it's
Mhm.
all jumbled in with everybody working on a big giant thing.
Absolutely.
And so that's part of because what we're talking about today is leaving the corporate world in order to make a difference,
Mhm.
right? And so um, this is where it's also scary, like, who am I to make a difference? How do I know I can make a difference? What, I don't want to have the big ego that I'm making a big difference. And that the difference doesn't I mean, like, you don't have to be Oprah, right? It doesn't have to be that. When you make a difference in an individual's life,
Mhm.
right, it's huge. And if making the difference is volunteering, that's
Mhm.
where you do. So there's so many ways to make a difference, but there's so many things that are make us freak out. So money for sure, right?
Mhm.
So that's why we want to be able to get ready, right? We have to get
Mhm.
ready for this change. um, it's not just that we just jump ship. I never, when my clients are like, man, I got to do something different, help me discover what it is. I call it find your wow, right?
Mhm.
Right? Sort of find your wow, right? That's your what you're passionate about. And then from there, we can find your purpose. And then from there, we can grab all of these skills and gifts that you have and put the puzzle together to discover what you can do with them in order to make the difference, right? So this is
Mhm.
kind of like but it starts with who you are now, right? And so we're trying to do all this, and this takes time. So we want to make sure that we can be getting ready for this without threatening our safety, right? If our brains are like, oh, it's unsafe, we're never going to do that. We're not going to be making the difference in the world that we're here to make, for whomever that may be.
And that's really, really important, because if we're distracted by worrying about things that are not in our business, it's going to prevent the success or delay the success of the business.
Hmm.
You have to be ready.
Right, right. That graspiness about how will I fund my life,
Mhm.
right? You have to solve that puzzle and get ready for it emotionally and
Mhm.
and and make a plan. Like I remember when I was before I quit my 6-figure year job to just full-time school for life coaching, I made a worst case plan. Like what's the very worst thing that can happen? What would I do if this fails? If I
Mhm.
cannot make a business out of this passion and purpose that I know I have? Like what
Mhm.
happens if I fail at it? What would I do? So instead of just letting it be like, oh, what if I fail and not doing it? Making a plan gave
Mhm.
me a safety net. So I was like, okay, what would I do? Well, I would redo my resume, but I would switch my resume around for what I know now because I've learned so many amazing tools. And how might I use the skills that I had and still have, the new skills that I've acquired, and my
To
new
create
passion or
something
purpose
else.
to
Mhm.
now what kind of company might want someone like that. So I would shop it differently. So I made a
Mhm.
whole plan. I wrote it out because without a plan my brain was going to be stuck in what if you don't make it, what if you don't make it, what if you don't make it. So a plan was huge, really huge.
Yeah, you use the word emotional, and I think that's really important because our emotions, the 6 inches between our ears, controls more than we realize. And if you can
Okay.
satisfy some of that panic and post it on the wall so you don't forget you did it.
Right, right. Because the panic, all of our emotions, I mean,
Mhm.
unless you're being cornered by a saber-toothed tiger, all of your emotions come from your thoughts, right?
Mhm.
So if your thoughts are, I'll never do it, that's a thought, right?
Mhm.
You're going to have that panic. If your thought is, how can I recover if this doesn't work? And you make a
Mhm.
plan. Now your thoughts are, I have a plan if it doesn't work. It's much less scary because I have a plan. So
Mhm.
that's a big help. Another thing that I always tell my clients is when they're like they want to jump ship. They're like, I'm all done. I gotta go. I can't do this anymore. And I get it
Right
because I
now.
was there, right? I'm like, okay, but it takes time when you're going through a big transition, a big change. It's gonna be a big change.
Mhm.
You don't jump in and do big things in the real world. Change starts with small changes internally in your mind, in your heart, right? So we want to just give ourselves some time to get used to things, right? And so
Mhm.
one of the things I always tell my clients is let's just let your current employer fund your change, fund
Mhm.
this transition for you, you know, or if I've had people who are unemployed in some way, what can you do to fund your change right now?
Mhm.
Because you don't go from, like, I don't know what I want, but let's figure it out and make a business out of it, to paying your bills in 1 month. That's not going to
Mm.
happen. Right? So we gotta, but when you think, oh, I don't want to work for that person, and they feel yucky about it, the way to turn around that mindset is, oh, they're funding my next great thing, my making a difference in the world, they're paying for it. Ha ha. Right? So that
And
feels really
changing your
good.
outlook about what you're currently doing is going to affect what you're doing today, but also it's going to affect your business venture that you're doing. You're going into it in a more positive manner. Makes a
Totally.
huge difference.
Totally. Yeah. Instead of I'm escaping and let's hope the grass is greener, you have
Mhm.
a much more positive feeling about what you're doing. I mean, and that's beautiful. When I got to say, well, what are you doing next? Right? Because this, like you were mentioning earlier, we have this identity. Now, what we do for a living should not be our identity, but
Mhm.
unfortunately, we tie it together. And that's one of the very first things we have to do is sever your identity from your job, from your
Mhm.
status, from your
Mhm.
salary. That has nothing to do with who you are, right?
Mhm.
So we always have to get clear on who you are outside of roles, responsibilities, expectations. That's the core. That's where we start. And once you know that, then the next thing to do is to get comfortable with, if you're going to make this change, you've got to get excited about it and be able
Mhm.
to call yourself something. What are you going to say, right? When I left, I left the corporate world. I was like 45. I was too young to say, "Oh, I'm retired." Like, and because I wasn't retiring, I was just going on to the next thing,
Transitioning.
transitioning to making a difference, right?
Right.
And I started by just saying, well, I'm a life coach, right?
Mhm.
But people, especially in Buffalo, New York, where I live, 15 years ago, nobody knew what that was. They're like, what are you talking about? Like, I don't even, they're like, oh, and their eyes will
Yeah.
glaze over and they go do
Oh,
something
you're
else.
one of those.
Right. So, really, to understand how you're making a difference, and once you understand that and you can articulate that, then you can come up with, not be a deer in headlights when someone says, "Well, what are you going to do now?" You know
It's
what I mean?
practicing the elevator speech, right? That the old adage of you have to practice your what are you going to say to somebody in an elevator? And the more that you do that, the more it becomes you. And so, and the more you're going to find the right words that fit you, that comes out naturally, but it takes practice.
It takes
because
practice.
you
It
because
takes
that practice also helps you with your internal belief, because you have to believe that that is what you are doing and that is who you are. So the more you practice at it and say I am,
Mhm.
the more it becomes you.
Right. And one of the, like one of the ways that I say it is I'll say, my gift is this, and I love doing that. And see, that's got built in emotion. I'm talking about my gifts. I already know I've discovered my gifts, right? And
Mm-hmm.
that's what you do during that time while your employer is funding your change. You're discovering what your gifts are,
Mm-hmm. I
So
love
my
that.
gift is lighting the way for people who want to make a difference in the world. I already know it. It feels so true. But it did, like you said, it took some time for me to like hone in on that.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
then, and what do I love doing? I love helping people to unleash that bigness inside of them, to get clear, to get confident, to be able to also live a balanced life, right? So I'm trying to, like I love doing that, right? So
Mm-hmm.
when you instead of like the standard elevator speech, if you can know what your gifts are and you
Mm-hmm.
tell people what you love to do, then you don't even need a title. don't
Mm-hmm.
don't even worry about that. How do I do that? Speaking, coaching, writing. That's just the how. That's not the
Mm-hmm.
what.
The
That's not
why
my
and the
why.
why
And the
and the
why.
why.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. Another big thing that someone can do right now um, to get ready, because that's all you want to do. Don't jump ship, everybody. Just you got to get emotionally ready for something, and then you have to get pragmatically ready,
Mm-hmm.
right? So pragmatic is like that, letting your employer fund the change, right? Maybe you can be doing some savings or whatever, so that you're letting them do it while you're doing this, part time on your own. But one of the internal things is to trust your wings to fly. There is that quote, I think it's Anais Nin, I'm not sure, that says, the bird goes out on the limb not because it trusts the limb not to break, but because it trusts its wings to fly.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was considering leaving that big corporate high paying job, right? I was like, woo, that's a
Yeah,
big giant, like jump, right? Like
that's
trust
the
my
Grand
wings.
Canyon you have to jump over.
Right. So, how do you trust your wings? Well, what I did is I looked back and I said, okay, when I graduated from college at 21 years old, I had a piece of crap car that couldn't have been worth $1,000. I had no other assets to my name, and I didn't have a job.
Mm-hmm.
And yet, I was like, the sky is the limit. I
Yeah,
can do anything, right? And I was
right.
so much younger and stupider than I am now. So here I was at 45 going, God, I have so many skills. I have learned so much stuff. I have already proven what I can do to myself and to employers, etc. Like I'm more experienced, smarter, older, and I have some assets under my belt, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So who says I can't do this again? Of course I can.
We
So
have to
looking
remind ourselves how wonderful we are,
right. And how capable we are. Because when you look
capable.
back and say, look what I've already done,
Mm-hmm.
that's how we recognize we have these wings that we can trust to
Mm-hmm.
fly.
Exactly.
Yeah. Do you have any other things you want to say to help people get ready for change?
I think that we also have to recognize that the change, well, you've already said it, the change isn't right this second. The change has to happen at the right time.
Mm-hmm.
And so in if you're starting a new venture, you have to really understand, there's so much you have to understand about it, but don't let that overwhelm you. So there's so many things to do, and you can get really stuck in the weeds of marketing your business and having a business plan, but you have to really come back down to the roots of why do you want to do it, what skills do you have that makes this business capable, and what are you going to do, how is it going to help others, and if you can remember those important aspects, those are going to have to carry you through the difficult times. I saw this great graphic where it was the life of an entrepreneur: 9 o'clock with a cup of coffee, excited by 10, deflated by 11, back, lunch in the middle, excited by 3, deflated by 4, back in the middle. Because that is honestly what happens when you're in your business. There are so many different emotions that will happen all the day. I call it the rebound rate. What is your rebound rate? How quickly do you rebound from the thing that dragged you down for just a second? And the more that you work through it, and the more you're ready you are to launch your business or take that jump and burn that boat, the quicker your rebound rate is going to be, and you're not going to let those small
Right.
pieces drag you down.
Right. It takes resilience. It takes
It's easy
tenacity.
to quit
Yeah, it's
once you
easy to
start.
quit, right? Um, and so it and for you to know you have what it takes, because that's one of the biggest fears is
Mhm.
right, is to look back at how far you've come. That's a tool
Mhm.
I take every client through. Let's look back and see how far you've come. Not just what you've been through, but how you grew because of those experiences.
And there's so
And
many skills that you've acquired that will be applicable to this business that could be totally different from the business that your venture. But the skills that you have that you're going to bring to the table are the ones that are going to make the difference. It comes back to your why. It all starts on that why. Why did you even have this idea in the beginning, and what does that really mean?
yeah, very true.
Mhm.
And if you have that inkling, right, that you're supposed to be making a difference, to
Mhm.
me, I always say it's like Spider-Man, right? With great power comes great responsibility.
Yes.
So if you have that inkling, you can fight it, but it's not going away. So instead of fighting it, how about trying to discover what might be? Again,
Mhm.
no sudden moves. It's just about a discovery process, right?
Mhm.
And one of the things they could do if they want to talk it through, they could call you, they could call me. You can set up a little time to chat with either one of us,
Mhm.
to kind of talk it through and say, I'm freaking out about A, B,
I
C, and
think
D.
that's really important because if you leave those feelings inside, they're going to fester. But if you can talk that out with another person that's already been through a process, even if the business is totally different, the process is similar.
Right.
And once you start to voice those, you can put them into perspective
Yes.
and also make a list of the fears that you have and make a list of the excited points that you have and compare the two to put them into perspective as well, because our mind doesn't create the correct perspective because
Never.
emotions get all mixed in.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. I'm a big, I always say, what does your gut say? Because
Mhm.
if you look back on your whole life, every time your gut said something, whether you listened to it or you didn't, it was right. It's always right. Darn it,
Always,
it's always right. So,
always.
what does it say this time? And if your gut says make the leap, then your brain's job is to be the servant, not the
Mhm.
master. To be the servant to that true part of you, we call it your essential self, that knows the way. It
Mhm.
knows what's right. It's your internal GPS, and it's saying, it told me, make a U turn and get out. And so, then my brain is the way, the smarts. That's my race car. That's going to actually do the turning, right?
Mhm.
And get me to where I got to go. But the race car doesn't do me much good if I'm not listening to that GPS to get to my goal.
Mhm.
So that's a really important thing is to you got to trust your gut, trust your internal GPS. It does know the way whether you
Mhm.
listen to it or not. So yeah. This has been really wonderful, Jeanne. I want to
I've
thank you
enjoyed
so
it.
much for
Oh,
being on
you're welcome.
Conversations
Thank
Worth Your
you.
While. Yeah. Now, why don't you tell our audience a little bit about your podcast?
Oh, wonderful. I'd be glad to. So, Discover Rising Tides is the website and platform. And so I talk with women business owners and really a lot of the conversations that we're having here, because understanding their journey, what did they do before? How did they get where they're at? And why? Why is their business important? And then how do they utilize the outdoors in order to maintain life balance?
Mm,
So I think we've talked a little bit about balance. We could go on for another hour about it, but I think that taking care of yourself is the most important part of the success of your business. And making time for yourself, I struggle with it, but I need it.
mm.
So and I figured there were other people out there, and how can I take some time to uh to um to talk about their business and give their business some light and their journey, and maybe it will touch others and help them
Right.
make a change.
So maybe our audience members can tune into your podcast, put it on their little earbuds, and take a walk while they're listening
Yes, exactly.
outside.
That's
Yeah.
exactly right. Yes. And so the podcasts are on the website as well as on YouTube under Discover Rising Tides.
Awesome. Well, I will put your contact information
Great.
and the podcast information into the description of this video. So
Great.
we'll have that.
And if
Okay.
anybody has any questions, that whether it's the transition or whatever, feel free to reach out.
Right. Absolutely. Beautiful. Awesome. Thank you. And once again, I'm Linda Bucher, helping you to lighten your load, unleash that bigness inside of you, make an impact, and live a balanced, rewarding life. And I'd like to thank Jeanne Gallagher of Seaside Solutions and Discover Rising Tides. I'd also like to thank you, our audience, for sharing your time with us today. So please subscribe and remember to check the description where you'll find our contact information. And you can reach out to either one of us. We're both open for conversation, and we have a way to connect with us. So that would be beautiful. And until next time, make sure that you've made this conversation worth your while by fueling the spark that it ignited.